Hi everyone, and hi everyone. In case you didn't hear me loud enough, welcome to another episode of FEW Livestream. And today we are going to talk about fundraising with Tu No from Touchstone Partners. Now, if you want more business insights from experts in the field and stay updated on the latest business insights, do sign up for our free membership in the link below. And as a member, you always have access to exclusive offers, collaboration opportunities, and complimentary business advice. And as always, if you have any questions during the live stream, please ask them in the comment section below. Now, okay, welcome to our session today too. It's so nice to have you here. Before we start, I was wondering whether you can, do a brief introduction of Touchstone Partners. Tell us what your business does.
Yeah, so nice to see you, I guess, virtually, Megan. Actually, I've been a founder for the past 11 years. I
Wow.
originally started YOLA, which is an education company.
Mm-hmm.
We teach English online, offline to Vietnamese students. And then recently, I also founded Touchstone Partners, which is an early stage venture capital fund focusing on early stage tech startups in Southeast Asia.
Nice. Wow. With 11 years of experience, I'm sure you have a lot to share with us. So let's jump right into the questions. You know, yourself as an expert, both as an entrepreneur and now as an investor in looking and assessing startups pitch decks. So first question, what is the first step to do for any business individual that when this business individual is considering raising funds? What is the first step?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it can be a very tiring process when it comes to fundraising. So I think for founders, the questions of like, how do I survive in the next 18 months,
Mm-hmm.
especially for tech startups when you probably don't have a lot of like revenues or even like a good business model yet. So to answer that question, beside thinking about how to raise funds from family, friends, or angel investors, I would actually think about how will my business survive even if I cannot raise a lot of money.
I
So
see.
that's a very fundamental question, and I'll tell you why that question will actually help with fundraising, because the more you can think about it, the more you actually focus on products, on really having a sound business model, and that's when investors will actually come to you, and that's the position you want to be in. You don't want to be in the other position when you're desperate for money and ask everyone.
I see. Now, to I understand that you have actually prepared a very nice diagram that help our audience today to go through the whole flow, the bigger picture concept of fundraising. May I ask the team to pull that up, please?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I've seen some of the questions submitted, and the questions also around like, how do I find the investors? And
Right.
generally, they come from the three different buckets: family and friends, or some people will say like fools, right? Like people who actually just like to support you as a person more than expecting huge financial returns from it. So these sources, these people, these kind of family and friends investors usually come in for the first year of the business. Secondly, there are angel investors. There are incubator and accelerator programs, especially for first-time founders. The programs can serve as a great way to then help you introduce with their investors network. Usually, they have program fees in addition to the money that they will invest into the companies. I'll go into how to think about how much money you should ask from these programs later. And then the third is and are more like the professional VC funds. And in some situation, even banks, if you think of debt as a way to raise funding. They also one source you can think about. Usually for VC funds, they come in when the business already has some traction, has even some revenues, and there are a lot more professionals and structured compared with the family, friends, and even individual investors. So I guess one number that we I know other founders usually think about is the 18 months kind of runway. So when you go ahead of if you add up salary, add up office, add up servers, if you build a product online for the next 18 months, and then you need marketing and sales expenses, how much in total you need, and that will give you a ballpark. I'll just say example, I'll need 1 million. That's one number. That's one example number to walk us through this exercise. Then how do I go about raising this $1 million? The first question you have to answer for yourself as well as the investors is that what are you building, and how will the market value what you're building? So, for example, I'm building an online education product. Then I have to look into, okay, fine, what is the market for my product? Is my product teaching English? Then the market is English training market. Is my product covering just Vietnam as a geography, or will I cover more than just Vietnam? Then that will give me a ballpark of like how big the potential of the business can be. The second question of like valuation, how do I value it? Honestly, for early stage, for fundraising, you should talk to other founders and read the news and other investors early on, just to know how people value similar startups. If other companies at similar stage are in your particular sector are valued at 5 million USD at the similar stage, then that's the range of valuation that you can work with. This is very different from mature business when there are profits, there are revenues, and there are historical financials. If businesses have those numbers, then the valuation will come from a much more detailed kind of like discounted cash flow valuation approach. But for early stage startups, for the first month coming, you hardly have any numbers to work with. So the valuation really comes from like the benchmark. And any premium you can get, meaning any valuation you can get that's higher than the benchmark, that's on you. That's basically how can you demonstrate to the investors, you and your co-founders team makes for a strong team, what is the technology or what is the model that will make you so much more competitive and more defensible compared with other probably even bigger competitors out there. So that is the difference that investors out there will consider.
Okay. So let me just quickly summarize what you have said, because quite a full load of information. I think to start from a very interesting angle, when we look at fundraising, first of all, do a quick sort of summary of cost that is needed for the next 18 months. With that amount, think about the market size that the market. I'm sorry, is there an echo going on? I just want to check with my team. Is there an echo? Okay, there is an echo from my voice. Hold on now. Okay, I don't hear it anymore. Okay, let me continue then with with this market size, then we then have to look at the benchmark. So how our competitors are doing and how much fund they are raising. Try to gather as much news as we can from news sources, or from hearsay on the ground. And then finally, really think about why is it that investors want to invest in us, right? Is credibility of the founders, which is what Tu has mentioned. How many years of experience they have had, the founding team, and then finally we have to think about as a company, what are our value propositions. So is that the technology that we're building? Do we have a moat, that means a defense system, such that when a competitor comes in, they won't take us down so easily? So these are some of the questions for us to think about. Thank you so much for that, too. Now let's move on to the next question, which is, you mentioned about all these nice to haves, right? When we think about raising funds and things to put in our pitch decks, what are some of the biggest mistakes to avoid when creating such a pitch deck?
Less is more. So
okay.
I mean, most pitch decks, when you send to people, it will be sent around. Unfortunately, that's what it is. So avoid sharing too many details of the company. You share enough so that the investors wanna get on meeting or Zoom call with you. So usually, between 10 to 15 slides is enough. I would say the pitch decks, whether it's in the form of the pitch deck or it's actually in the form of a conversation, usually works best when it provides the audience with the context of what is the problem. I think usually people come in right away within the first few slides with, this is my solution. But until the pain point is really deeply understood, then people will not really value why your solutions will fit in. So you want to spend time really painting colors and helping, basically educating your investors, right? Not everyone knows the problems as deeply as you as a founder. I think founders will have to always wear the hat of, you actually the experts. When I'm on a fundraising mode, I know what is best. I have a vision what is best for my students and my model. And my job is to inspire other people to believe in it. It's not the other way around. When you actually ask the investors for their experts' opinion, they experts in investing or macro market trends, but they're probably not experts in that particular product that you're building.
I see. Okay, now just now you mentioned about talking and speaking to the network, leveraging on the network. I was just wondering, how best can a business owner leverage his or her existing network then to find such opportunities to pitch and to share the business ideas with more people?
So I am semi-introverted. So big networking receptions, big startup events usually don't work well for me. Those are not places that I go to, so to call, or network. I'm good at small group conversations or one-on-one conversations. So I actually, if I identify there's I read on the news, let's say there's investor A investing in this edtech startup in Southeast Asia, then I'll have to, very simple nowadays, to go on, LinkedIn, Facebook, and see if we have any mutual connections with those investors. And usually the process will start, I would have to say, about a year before when you think you need money. Because nurturing relationships takes time, and when you talk to 10 investors, probably 1 or 2 will be more interested and more helpful to you, to be frank. And so it takes time to build this relationship. So don't build relationship until you think you need it. But I think another rule of thumb is that actually investors value introductions from other founders that they trust. So if you can network with other founders, I think that's that's equally important, if not more than the people who work in the funds themselves.
I see. Okay. Two, I was just wondering, in the slide that you have shared with us, I think we covered some of the questions that we have asked, which is like, biggest mistakes to avoid, what do investors look for, and who are the network and the people that we should speak to leverage to hear our ideas out. Any other points you would like to highlight from the slide you have presented?
I think the part here on how much should I give to investors, do I give, how do I know if I give out 2%, 10%, or how do I know, should I commit certain KPIs to them? How do I commit when to exit to them? So those are questions that are best to reflect on depending on you as a founder, what you need. So for me and my YOLA co-founders, we want to build a very long-term company. So we don't want to commit into any short-term KPIs. We don't want to commit into any specific exit valuation. So those are things that we remove actually from the investors offer. And we're just happy to walk away if it's a term that's too aggressive and too violent for us. This is why at the beginning I said, like, even in the worst case scenario, if you cannot raise fund as expected, how can you survive as a team and as a business? That's to me, it's more central than how successful I am in fundraising.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful slide with us. I think this is quite a lot of information for us entrepreneurs to take away. With all the basic questions answered so far, I think let's move then on to the Q&A section. The first question that is asked is whether for two, you mentioned about fundraising, right? But there are different rounds. There are angel rounds, there are seed rounds, and the progression goes from there. So if you can share, when we present the deck of slides, the factors to consider for a Series A and a seed round. What maybe not series, pre-seed and angel. Is there any difference in our thought process in creating that pitch deck?
Yeah, so angels, I mean, I think in Southeast Asia, there are less experienced angels compared with other cities, other ecosystems. So sometimes, it's about the conversation with the investors. Yeah, I would say angel is the easiest to inspire with the vision, but it's also the hardest because you hardly build anything. So a more convincing conversation would actually show me some prototype, right? It could be just help the investors visualize what you're building. For ELSA, for example, which is another startup that I built, we built an app for English pronunciation using AI and speech recognition. So the prototype was actually a screen on the browser when the investor or when the users put in speak in a simple word, apple, for example, then our prototype actually returns the feedback. Well, now you might ask, like, how did we get the money to build that prototype in the first place? That's a lot of begging our own friends and engineers to be really scrappy. It doesn't have to be perfect. And of course, our first prototype cannot give feedback to every English word in the world. But if we can zoom in into these specific words at this specific hour, we can do it. So simplify the technical problem so that we can build the first prototype. I would say that's the first one. I mean, any user feedback is meaningful, but again, you probably don't have that many users to speak of. For seed, I think it's the question of the product market fit. If can you describe to the investors, hey, with our prototype, these are the highly these are the users who use our products the most, and do they returns, are they active, and we have already started to charge money, and they buying it. So it's more like the potential. I think also for seed, what I've seen is startups try to see similar models in other countries that might be at a later stage, that will also help in a way inspire the seed investors to understand the potential. For Series A and B, I think it's a lot more numbers. It's a lot more to demonstrate not just the numbers of users, but do you have a repeatable way to acquire your customers, and or how much you put in to acquire a customer, what is the economics, the unit economics in terms of the profit for that particular customer. Of course, as a business, we cannot have answers to everything, but in terms of like channels of acquisition, you can present to them, hey, if we have money, then these are the channels that will also expand and to scale the business.
I see. So
one thing I got for, especially for angels and seed, teams is very important. So founders, how committed the teams are, how will the skills be complementary to each other. So it's really important to present the founders team and show the investors that it's not a one woman and one man show. It's not like one person holds the most equity and then the rest just follow. It's like really showing that you have a strong team. For Series A and B, then it's also a team, but this time around it's not just the founders, but it's really, do you have the full or almost full kind of teams of people who are leaders of marketing, director of engineering, etc., to scale the company.
Right. So, on the topic of co-founders themselves, right, and you as an entrepreneur yourself, you mentioned that it is really important that it's not a one-man team, and sure, we have also heard that a lot in the industry. Most of the time, investors tend to prefer a co-founding team of more than one. If it's an individual one-person game, then they probably will raise more questions about the credentials and everything about that particular individual. So now coming back to this idea of a co-founding team, also just wondering, right, among all the other metrics that we are looking at, say product market fit, you mentioned, how good is the idea, how repeatable is the how repeatable are the ways for the products to scale? How much emphasis do investors place on the makeup of the co-founding team? So is it way more? Is it way more than, say, your market fit, your market sizing, etc., or is it roughly the same?
Yeah, so I can only speak for early stage investments because I'm that more and have met more colleagues working in this stage. I would say 80% is on the people. When usually the process goes like this, after meeting with the founders, then we go around, ask other people about the founders. So do a reference check, right? We ask a lot of people who might know you or who might have worked with you. So usually if the founders are, if the team is good and if the market is somewhat, we don't quite understand, or we think like it's too small, then we actually willing to spend more time to brainstorm with the team to help the team actually succeed with even a bigger, better vision. But if it's the other way around, like we're just saying, hey, this market is sexy, but the team is like B to average, then it's probably a no. I mean, it's funny. I just had another session on co-founders. What makes up like a good co-founders team? We've heard a lot about complementary skill sets. I think there has to be another dimension on complementary personality and temperament. So on the psychology of the team, when there are conflicts, will the founders be able to reach a consensus? And even if they cannot reach a consensus, which will always happen, who will make the final decision? Who will make the last call? So those sort of questions, if the founders team, with the more mature team, I feel like they usually have these rules set out for them together before problems actually arise. So when things arise, and they have a process, a decision making sort of like framework to work with.
Nice. Okay, I actually forgot my mid-video little blurb that I have to talk about FVW, so please let me do that right now. If you have been enjoying this live stream, make sure to sign up for our free membership in the link below. And as a member, you have access to exclusive offers, collaboration opportunities, and complimentary business advice. Okay, welcome back, guys. So let's move on. We have a question from James, and this question is more pertaining to your other business product, your other company, ELSA. And he asked whether ELSA can provide support for intelligibility assessment in pronunciation practice apps.
Yeah, so for ELSA, we don't provide API for other apps, but there are other speech recognition companies out there, and that I know that does this.
Okay. So I'm also very curious about your 11 years of experience, right? So over the 11 years, you've built so many companies, built so many different type of products. If there are, I think, 3 key lessons you can gather from your 11 years of experience for our entrepreneurs, what would you share with them?
Only 3.
I guess it's probably 300, but bearing in mind of the time, I'm sorry, I have to force you have to pick 3.
Yeah, so I think the first one is actually counterintuitive. As founders, I think the default mode is we work really hard and we work nonstop. We have to work harder than the bigger competitors, right? And it's counterintuitive because I've learned to actually know to stop when to work so that I can take care of myself and I can have energy to continue with building my business. It's actually not a one day or even like a few years kind of journey. Companies have a long path. YOLA is now 11 years and it's still running. ELSA is now 5 years still running. So you don't want to be exhausted before you scale the company. I think that's the biggest lesson. The second one is, I think this is going back to choosing co-founders and investors to work with. Really have your standards and have your criteria, and then don't compromise on it. Other people might actually value speed, but I spend a lot more time and I'm willing to trade off speed with understanding who are my co-founders and who are my investors before I commit to them long term. And this approach to me has paid off because I've seen in difficult situations, these are people who we all together think for the business, but I can also think for them as people, and they can think for me as a person. So you come into decisions that might conflict with your own personal individual interest, or your co-founder's interest, or the investor's interest, right? So actually, as a founder, or your employees' interests. You always have to make decisions that to really balance these factors. So spending time to choosing who you work with is really important. Don't just jump in because that's that person looks good on paper, or that's a lot of money, without having done the reference check. Even on investors, you can do the due diligence on them. Number
Okay.
three.
Number three, yeah, there's one more.
Number three, huh? Three, I think. Number three is okay. So for YOLA, we have 500 employees now.
Mm-hmm.
For the first, between year 3 and year 5, we have between 30 to 50 people. And at the time, we just assume, like these people actually worked with us since the beginning. So we didn't really proactively formalize culture / values training program. And then later on from year 6, then we have to rebuild it into the system. And that took a while. So I would say if you really want to build a long-term business, culture is important. So it's something to do even in year 2 and 3, not just when you have a lot more people.
I absolutely agree. Coming from a startup background myself, that really the culture of the startup sets the type of people we hire, and it really sets out whether this the whole journey, whether it's going to fail or succeed. So I absolutely resonate with that. We have one more question from Jingyi. What should I make sure to do before accepting angel investments from my startup?
Yeah. So number one, don't give 50% for 5,000, 10,000 USD. I'm exaggerating, but I've seen it. So I guess we just double check with other people on is your company valuation, is it in the right ballpark that you can negotiate, and really for angel investors. There are other ways that are not about equity. They can give you a convertible debt, so that later on, convertible note. So later on, when you raise from VC funds, there are there's going to be better information to value your company. So that's when the valuation will come in. So that will help you to make sure that you don't lose too much equity early on. Number two is, I think, be upfront about how intrusive or how passive the investors will be with your business. I mean, everyone will say they will support you. Be explicit about that. Do you want me to report to you monthly, or that's not needed at all? An email update will be okay. So really spell out what will your interactions with this particular investor be like once you get the money. And I think this is the same between angel investments and VCs. Have very good lawyers or lawyer friends with you to go through all of the legal contracts that you sign with people.
Good. Thank you for the tips so much. Now, we have, I think that's all the questions we have for now. Once again, thank you so much. It's so lovely to have you to speak with us today. And to all our audience, thank you for tuning in today. It's almost 12:35. I'm mindful that we overrun by 5 minutes because of the overwhelming questions. Now, to see the calendar of our future live streams or to submit a request for a live stream, please check our website at few.community/askfewanything or find it in the description below. If you enjoyed this episode and want more business insights from our experts or stay updated to the latest business insights, sign up for a free membership in the link below as well. As a member, you'll always be able to connect with other members and industry leaders, as well as enjoy exclusive and complimentary business service. All right, I'm done with my blog. Thank you so much once again for your time, and thank you everyone. See you guys next time. Bye bye.